if she would give us an invocation, a thought, and then the pledge.
Okay, I'll do an invocation today.
All right, thank you.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are gathered together as a few of thy servants, tasked with the privilege and stewardship of governing the city. And please bless that we can be able to have thy spirit with us. Please bless us that we may be able to have thy wisdom and direction as we make decisions, as we listen, and as we come to consensus. We are so very grateful for the beautiful area that we get to live in. We're grateful for the freedoms of this land, and we're grateful for all of the beauties that are so prevalent around us. We're grateful for the wonderful people for whom we serve. We're grateful for thy bounteous blessings that are so abundant in our lives. We ask thee for thy guidance again. Please bless that thy spirit will attend us. Please bless the fire and public service members that are fighting the flames on our mountainside, that they may be able to be successful and put the fire out quickly and effectively. Please bless all those who are struggling in our city, and please help us to find ways that we can reach out to one another in love and friendship and brotherhood. And we ask these things humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Please repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ekstrom. Muchly appreciated. There. We'll now go to our consent agenda and would be looking for any discussion, amendments to the council minutes of May 12th, 2020, and also May 26th, 2020. Are there any corrections? If not, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of May 12th, 2020, and also May 26th, 2020.
Mayor, I'll move that we approve the consent agenda.
I second it.
We have a motion by Councilman Swanson and a second. I'm going to get off here.
Counselor, are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah, we're here.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. We lost the mayor. He should be back now.
Sounds like he's in a helicopter.
That would be me.
It says I'm muted by host.
You should be good now. Sorry, I was trying to unmute you.
Most people try to mute me, John, so thanks for being the exception to the rule. Muchly appreciated. All right, I think we had a motion by Councilman Swanson and a second by Councilman Severing to approve the council minutes of May 12th and May 26th. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much. We'd excuse Councilman Barker this evening. I believe that he's probably doing your civic duty and participating in fighting the fire up on the hill. We'll go to our active agenda and see if we have any public comments. Once again, as a reminder, please state your full name and address, and please try to limit your comments to 5 minutes. So John, we'll watch. Let us know if we have any public comments.
We do have one from Dave Hume.
All
So
right,
he should be
Dave.
able to unmute himself and speak.
Hey, Dave. Looks like he's muted. Dave, it looks like you're muted.
Can you hear me?
We can now.
Dave Hume, 513 East, 1700 North, North Ogden. It's been about 6 months since the City Council granted Councilman Barker an extension of 1 year to complete his property annexation so that he can remain a member of the City Council. And I'd be interested in a status update on the progress that has been made thus far. I hope that the actions taken since that time have been sufficient to justify the Council's faith that the process would be accomplished in as little time as possible. I believe that the law was written in no small part to ensure that elected officials are always subject to the laws they themselves pass. Recent discussions about the potential to raise property taxes to cover the costs of a public safety building, possibly through bonding, caused me to wonder if Councilman Barker could vote to raise the property taxes of North Ogden City residents without having to pay them himself. I'm also unaware of any movement towards clarifying the language of our statute to ensure that this situation cannot happen again. For example, to state exactly what would happen and when and who would be responsible for such action if a candidate for office in North Ogden City, having applied while still a resident, subsequently changes that status prior to the election and/or swearing in. I would hope that we would begin that process now so that it can be fully completed prior to next year's elections. To the extent that such laws require amended statutes from the state legislature, I would hope that we would immediately begin working with our elected officials to do so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dave, for joining us and expressing your comments. John, would you like to respond to Dave's comment regarding clarification of the statute? To the best of your knowledge, anything you have there?
So the state hasn't given us any guidance for the clarification. I know that in past years, so not this year, they have looked at the amendment, and that typically comes from the Lieutenant Governor's office. But we haven't heard anything from them since we talked to them about this issue initially. But if we would like to, we could probably reach out to the Utah League and see about the appetite of having them propose some changes on behalf of cities to add some clarification.
What is your recommendation, John, as our city attorney?
I think it would be very helpful to have a clearer statute. Currently, as written and as enforced by the courts, it's not very clear and it's not very well followed based on the few cases that I've heard about across the state dealing with this issue.
Okay, why don't you reach out then to the league and see if they have any interest in helping us there.
Okay.
Okay. I've had a chance to talk to Councilman Barker, and Annette, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or John. I believe that Councilman Barker has not filed a application for annexation. My recent discussion with him was that he's getting the survey completed and planned to have his application in within the next 4 to 6 weeks. That's the latest information I have. I don't know if any other council member has a comment or any further knowledge, or Annette or John.
Mayor and council, last week, Councilman Barker asked that I give him the annexation packet, which I did, and he's got that.
Okay, but nothing filed officially at this point in time.
That's correct, nothing filed.
Okay. that would be the update we have on that. I believe that the council granted Mr. Hume, as you indicated, 1 year. So we'll continue to follow up on that and make sure that that 1 year period of time is met. So thank you for your comments. Do we have other comments this evening?
Yes, we have a comment from Brenda Ashdown.
Okay, Brenda, if you would state your full name and address for us again, please.
Brenda Ashdown, 193 East Pleasant View Drive in North Ogden. My question is concerning 2550 North, behind where the new auto store is. I'm just wondering how long the cement garbage and the old dump truck and the piles of dirt can stay there. Is there a time limit on when they need to clean that up? Is it the auto parts that has that mess behind them? Is it someone else? That's my question.
John, do you want to answer that? I know we've had some discussions with the developer. Would you like to answer Brenda's question?
So the developer of the O'Reillys has committed to get rid of the concrete and the other materials that won't be used on site. They have an excavator there to assist in that. I don't know their exact timeline, but they are working on that. As far as getting the rest of the property smoothed out and developed, they actually have been talking with us about the path forward for the rest of that property, and working through the details of possibly submitting an application in the future.
So John, to clarify that, I've had discussion with the developer. He's committed to have that. I thought the cement would actually be removed by now. The dirt obviously will probably stay on site for future development, but the junk and the concrete should be removed. I thought he committed by the end of last week.
I will reach out to him and follow up on that with him. Let him know that the timeline he gave us, he's gone past that.
Yes, please do, because he made that commitment. So Brenda, thank you, but we have had conversations with him about removing the cement, things that won't be reused in future development.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, do we have other comments?
Yes, we've got a comment by Meg Sanders.
Okay, Meg, if you would state your name and address for us, please.
Yeah, Meg Sanders, 2915 North, 875 East in North Ogden. I wanted to thank Councilman Swanson and Councilman Severing for answering my email. I had some concerns about McGriff Park. It's been shut down and I haven't seen any progress on it or anything. So there's a park over here that's cordoned off. It still has signs that it's closed down for COVID, but from what I understand, the toys were supposed to be replaced. And I spoke to Parks and Rec today, and they told me it will be a whole nother year before those toys get replaced. So I wanted to know if there's a way to move that up. And that's all. Thanks so much.
Meg, I spoke with Tiffany. We were just with Tiffany earlier this evening on our field trip. I don't know if you caught my email return, but we do have the matching grant from RAMP, $40,000 from RAMP, and then $40,000 that the city put in its budget to replace that equipment. The new equipment will not be there till next year. However, in inspecting the equipment, there was some problems there. They've ordered some parts so they can fix that and open it up, but the new equipment is not scheduled to be there until early June of next year. But the park will be, my understanding, the park will be open as they repair the existing equipment there.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, any other comments from the public?
No, that's it.
Okay, just give a few seconds to see if anybody else has comments, and then we'll move on to item 5 on our agenda. Looks like we have no additional public comments, so if we could move on our agenda to item number 5, which is a discussion or action to consider appointments to the Arts Guild. And I will present that. For those who have been on the council for some time, this is a goal that we've had, just to get an arts guild. Ultimately, the long-term plan is to make that a separate entity, a 501c. I would like to see that get started. I think it would be very helpful to the city in our arts and things we're trying to accomplish in the city. Tonight, I am recommending and asking the council to appoint co-chairs. In the packet is an outline of the responsibilities of the Arts Guild. That was put together by John Call and Tiffany, the director of our Parks and Recreation. That would be expanded, I'm sure, as the committee is formed and works closely with the city. But this evening, I would like to recommend the appointment of co-chairs of Jamie Rasmussen and Todd Harris. In the packet, there was a little bit of an outline of information about Todd and about Jamie. I've had the chance to talk with both of them. They're very excited to serve the city and its citizens. Todd is currently an announcer with NBC Sports. Some of you may have seen him. He's done the Olympics. He's done some college football on Saturdays. He's a Screen Actors Guild member and a member of the American Federation of TV and Radio Artists. He lives in North Ogden, just off of Fruitland Drive. Jamie Rasmussen lives up just by the development of Pheasant Run. Now it's not Pheasant View, I can't remember. Jamie has been to several council meetings. She wants to be very involved in the community. And she has been affiliated, has some experience with the Davis County Arts, Davis County's Library Board. And she actually served as president of Clinton City Arts Board. And so I believe that these two individuals would give us a good start to the formation of our Arts Guild. So that would be my recommendation, and I would open that up for discussion of the council. Do any council members have any questions regarding that?
I looked over just the little bio that you gave of them, and they look very qualified. I know Todd personally. I don't know Jamie, but I highly recommend Todd on my acquaintance. So I'll take your word for it on Jamie. She seems great.
Nice job, Chris.
And just one bit of information. They would we have, I think, 5 or 6 other applications. They would interview those who have submitted applications or seek additional applications. And since it would kind of be their team, they would make recommendations that we would bring back to the city council. So just wanted to clarify that also.
So is this going to be a total number of 5? Is that what I understood, or 5 plus our 2 chair?
The charter, I don't believe, if I recall, has a maximum, but we would like an odd number. I think you'll see different segments in there. Part of it is fundraising. So I think it would be up to the council. My recommendation is we have no more than 7 members at this point in time.
Okay.
But that would be a council decision. Any further discussion? If not, I would then be looking for a motion by the council to approve the appointment of Todd Harris and Jamie Rasmussen as co-chairs of our Arts Guild. Do I have a motion?
Mayor,
Yes, Mayor, I move that we approve Todd Harris and Jamie Rasmussen as our co-chairs of our Arts Guild going forward.
and I second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilwoman Ekstrom and a second by Councilman Severing. Any further discussion? Councilman Swanson?
Would the Councilwoman Ekstrom, would you be amenable to amending your motion to include a maximum number of people at 7?
Sure, and then we could revisit it if it gets to be needed to be more. I mean, there gets to be there does get to be a problem when you get too many on a committee. But yeah, I think maybe the committee stays that size, and volunteers, we have the sky's the limit.
Okay, do you
Yes.
want to restate your motion then?
I will restate my motion. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve Jamie Rasmussen and Todd Harris as co-chairs of our Arts Guild with the maximum number of members on the Arts Guild at 7.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilwoman Ekstrom, a second by Councilman Severing. Any further discussion or comments? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you for your support there. We'll be anxious to get the Arts Guild going. We'll now move to item number 6 on our agenda, which is a discussion for action to consider an ordinance amending North Ogden zoning ordinance Title 11-1-4. Our presenter on that will be Rob Scott, and this is regarding creating a civic zone in the city. So is Rob with us, John?
Yes, he is here.
All right, Rob?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council and audience. Pleased to present a recommendation from our Planning Commission after due diligence over the past some clear back to December, when we initially brought this discussion forward to the Planning Commission. As you all know, one of the important things that we are trying to accomplish within our city is the implementation of the North Ogden City General Plan. As part of the general plan, there are specific designations within that general plan that relate to civic uses. The general plan map has a category for civic and institutional and parks separate and apart from residential and commercial. The general plan describes the parks and civic institutional categories as parks, public spaces designed and utilized for recreational purposes, and civic and institutional as schools, libraries, senior centers, and government buildings. One of the interesting things that we run into when we're working with the approval of city facilities is that typically these civic uses are unique as to both their purpose and function. And for the most part, are in our residential zones. Those standards are oriented towards homes and as far as setbacks, size, heights, and so forth. And as such, it has been a challenge at times for us to be able to make sure that as these civic facilities come forward for site plan review, that they're able to not only meet those standards, but they're able to accommodate a assurance that not only that the city ordinances are followed, but that the adjoining properties have an adequate buffer. So one of the key things in all of this is that if this ordinance is adopted, what this would do would be to establish within our ordinance a civic zone similar to our other zones, so amongst the list. So this would not apply any of our city properties at this time to be in the civic zone. That would be a separate action on the part of the Planning Commission recommendation and council, so that there would be a map amendment to actually apply these standards to specific properties. So let me just share with you a few things. We've given you in our staff report, we've given you a summary of what this ordinance does. First of all, one of the things that I've thoroughly enjoyed about working here in the city is that the way that our city departments work together. And planning staff has worked with Public Works and also our Parks and Recreation Department to ensure that the standards that we are proposing are going to meet not only their needs, but they're going to meet the needs of the public as well. So as part of this, the first thing that is in this ordinance is that we have a definition of open space within our ordinances. And we've added to that definition the term trails, walking paths, and plazas to be included in that definition, since that's part of what not only within the city operations, but also that would be a nice addition for our commercial projects as well. The second thing is that in order to establish a new zone, we have to include that in the list of zones that are in the chapter that talks about the list of zones, and the provision adds the civic zone CZ to the list of established zones. Then I've given you a summary of each of the subsections of the ordinance. And as such, we have a purpose statement. We've identified the permitted uses that are in the civic zone, including accessory buildings, cemeteries, civic buildings, civic complexes, public parks, and public utility substations. We also have some site development standards, and this is one where the coordination with the other departments was really critical, because we wanted to make sure that we recognize that there's a difference between particularly our parks and open space areas, which have a much greater amount of open space in them as opposed to civic buildings like City Hall, the Public Works Facility, et cetera. So there are some specific standards that relate to those particular facilities that identify, again, the unique character of those specific facilities. We also have a provision that requires that anytime we have a civic facility, that there be a requirement for our site plan approval, that they have to meet certain specific standards, sign regulations, fence regulations, exterior lighting, trash enclosures, and parking. The parking standard is also a unique one, because we've identified a standard for where we have an office complex versus where we have parks or other open space where there's much less need for parking. So we give some latitude there. And last but not least, we have a public utility substation standard that's already in the ordinance. We've amended that so that it is incorporated. We would not rezone those specific properties. We'd probably because they're so small, we would probably retain those as within their residential zones, but we've got specific standards that we think accomplishes what we need to do there. And then lastly, we have development plan references are added regarding civic uses in this existing provision. I've given you a summary of our general plan standards that I've briefly reviewed before. Part of that is that we are continually, as you know, continually evaluating our ordinances and policies to identify how they can be brought more in compliance with our general plan. So the summary of considerations tonight would be: what approval process and design standards should apply to civic uses, and is the amendment consistent with the general plan? The Planning Commission, after holding their public hearing on a 6-0 vote, recommends that the City Council adopt the civic zone. The Planning Commission found that the amendment is consistent with the general plan. And with that, Mayor and Council, I'd be more than happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate that presentation. Council, questions, discussions? Councilman Swanson?
Rob, as I read through this ordinance, the approving body is the commission, correct?
Yes, the planning commission has all site plans. Well, not all site plans, anything above a duplex.
Right, but it also mentioned that if anybody's wanting to make a modification to these, as long as it's the same or better materials and less than 5%, or if it's greater than 5%, it would go to the planning commission. Is that correct?
Well, the staff would have authority to modify things that are less than 5%. If it's anything close to that, then we would take it back to the planning commission.
Excellent.
That's consistent with our site plan chapter.
Any other questions, comments? Rob, could you just tell me how this benefits, what the benefits to the city and the citizens are by doing this?
Well, as I indicated at the beginning, first of all, it's consistent with our general plan. And we are able to identify how the relationship of our civic facilities blend in with our other land uses throughout the community. And then the second thing is that what these facilities, they're unique. And they have a different set of standards and needs relative to specifically residential homes, where our properties typically lie in those residential zones. And the next thing is, I think it furthers the commitment that the city has to comply with our own standards. And the last thing is that, consistent with that, we still have the process to go through to amend the zoning map.
You see this creating any problems with the current review of our general plan with the general plan steering committee?
I really don't. I think it really adds to it.
Okay.
So.
Mayor.
Oh, please, John.
Let's see, I think we had Councilwoman Ekstrom with her hand up first. Let's go with Councilwoman Ekstrom, please.
Oh, thank you. As I read over this, I really like that it has some parameters. I mean, it seems kind of incredible to me that we have not had any sort of standards up to this point. I don't know if we just kind of like, oh, it's city property, we do whatever we want. But I think this is really nice for the residents to be able to now have some gauge for an expectation of how things are going to be built on city property. I think it fits in well with the plan. I would love to hear if anybody has any drawbacks that they see. I couldn't see any, and I think it's really nicely spelled out, and I like it. So here's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ekstrom. Councilman Severing, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I would, I read through this. There's a lot of, it's very verbose, a lot of words. Rob, can you just give us an application of this so that we can all be clear, as well as the citizens, what we're talking about? Why does this zone make a difference in the future?
Well, the most important thing is that I think it gives us the ability to do 2 things. First of all, it establishes a standard for our civic uses. The most recent example was the Gold Star Memorial in front of City Hall. And as we approached that particular review, we identified the comparison within that as to how it was going to be. We obviously approved it through the site plan review, but we also pointed out how that the civic zone would be helpful in the future to reflect on the reasonableness of it. For example, the City Hall is in the RCC zone. That requires 50% of the site to be in open space. Well, you can well imagine it's close, but we're about 40 some odd percent. So to recognize that there are those unique differences, we need to be able to address that without just waving our hand and saying, gee, we're the city, will just go on here. So what the standard that we have is that for things like civic buildings, that a similar standard of open space would be 20%, which is what's in the ordinance, versus parks, which has a minimum of 50%. So that unique aspect of it is identified, and I believe it's a nice step forward for us.
So in other words, it's just a clarification for residents to understand what the city can do with its ground versus what residential can do.
And it also is a guide for the stewards of our city property. So it helps our those who are involved in functioning to have these facilities operate and so forth. For example, parks, they now have a guide to be able to get their site plans approved. The public works facility, or the amendment, you've got a consideration upcoming for an amendment to the civic complex with the potential of a new police station. So you've got some nice standards to be able to identify for your designers and what have you, to say, hey, this is how we think this is going to best be accommodated.
So it clarifies then even as well to the Parks Department, and it clarifies to the Planning Department. It just makes these issues really, really clean for everybody to understand the expectations.
That's what we hope we've accomplished.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
I believe I had a conversation with Chairman Thomas from the Planning Commission regarding this, and how he put it was, basically right now the city can kind of do whatever it wants. It's not necessarily governed by certain ordinances, and this clarifies that. But Rob, just to wrap up the conversation here, you've seen the proposal for a new public safety building. Let's say that we move forward with that, and that was taken to the Planning Commission now under the civic zone. I'm assuming that the civic zone would apply to that particular building. Would that be correct?
Well, the map has to still be amended to apply it to that property, but it would then, in that instance, yes, it would. And the nice thing would be is that you'd have the standards to be able to give to the architect up front to say, here's the standards, design it to meet them.
So speaking in reality, if this is passed this evening, we would then come back and identify all the city properties that would be rezoned to the civic zone. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the anticipation would be that all city-owned properties currently would come into this zone?
Everything with the exception of these public, these little substations and that type of thing.
Okay,
Yes.
So generally, the majority of the city-owned property would come into this zone.
Right.
So here's my question. What do you see as this creating any hurdles as an example for the public safety building? What would you see if the council decides to move forward? You've kind of seen an outlay. Do you see any hurdles this creates?
I actually think that it helps to identify both the approval process and design standards that would be needed to be identified and worked through to make it happen. I think it's a benefit. It's a nice guide.
Okay. Council,
So,
any other
Mayor,
questions?
I think,
Oh, John call.
so I think, to say that another way, I think that the city would, in theory, be following the similar process, but this makes it clear that we have to, and it outlines the process. So I don't want to say it makes it more difficult on the city, but it makes it clear the city needs to follow the same standard as any residential property owner or commercial property owner to get approvals through the city.
Just one last question from my standpoint, Rob. You've been around a bit. What other cities have this civic zone? Are we a pioneer here, or do we know other cities that have done this?
The basis for this is that years ago, I used to work in Ogden City, and they established a similar zone that related to Ogden Canyon, not the canyon, but along the Ogden River. And so the basis for that is my experience working with them on a similar type of situation. I'm not sure that they've applied it citywide like we're suggesting, but that's the basis of it.
Okay, council, any other questions? Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, Annette, we would need an ordinance number, so the council person making the motion would have the ordinance number. Do you have that for us?
I do. That is 2020-15.
Okay, council, we're looking for a motion to approve ordinance 2020-15. Do we have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we accept ordinance number 2020-15, creating a civic zone in the boundaries of North Ogden City.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilman Severing to approve ordinance 2020-15, which would be an ordinance of North Ogden City amending the zoning ordinance of North Ogden City to create a civic zone and adjusting the definition of open space, off-street parking standards, public utility substations, and site plan review standards. Do we have a second to Councilman?
I'll second.
We have a second from Councilwoman Ekstrom. Any further discussion?
Mayor,
Councilman Swanson?
is there any benefit to having a review, say 2 years down the road?
Would that need to be included in the motion, or do we have the right to do that? Or are you asking Councilman Swanson to have that mandated as part of the ordinance?
I'd like to, for us to get in the better habit of when we pass things like this, that we do a mandatory review process somewhere down the road, rather than waiting until there's a problem that forces us to review it. I think we would be better stewards and frankly create better ordinances long-term if we have these kinds of reviews. So I would prefer that we set a date for July of 2022 that we review this.
Councilman, could we say no later than, in case we'd like to review it prior to that?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Okay, Councilwoman Ekstrom, would you like to include Councilman Swanson's recommendation in your motion?
I would absolutely, but it was.
Oh, that was Councilman, excuse me. Councilman Severing, would you like to adopt Councilman Swanson's recommendation in your motion? Would you like to amend that?
I will if we feel like that's a necessity.
Well, it's open for discussion here with
I'm trying to
right now we have a motion and we're in the discussion phase, so
I'm just trying to figure out what we might need to, what would there be at Phil? I mean, I'm just kind of exploring this idea. What would we need to maybe review that we need to change?
Oh, whether or not the changes that were made are having the effect that we had anticipated.
I think we're going into a little bit of uncharted territory. We haven't had one like this before, and we want to just take a minute and say, did it do what we thought it would? And I think that's just a good idea to have that be.
So Councilwoman Ekstrom, have we defined what we want this to accomplish so we know what to measure against when we review? I guess that's my question is, do we specifically know what we expect this to accomplish so that when we review it, if we adopt Councilman Swanson's suggestion, do we know what we're measuring against that we hoped would happen?
That's what I think. It's like if we have a project that's going to be happening on city property, is it going to be following these guidelines? And was it easier to do because those guidelines were there? And also, hello, Felicity. Hi, Mom. Bye. Sorry, a little visitor. And then did it create any hurdles that we didn't foresee? Like, did it cause a problem? You know, again, it's going through this whole process that any resident is going to have to if they want to build something or do a project on their property. And now we're just giving the city the same kind of things. And now we're just, you know, we're going to try it. And then it's generally a good idea if you're going to try something new, go back and see, well, was it what we expected? Did we run into problems? Were things good? Do we need to add some things? So, you know, since this, again, it is brand new, I just think it's a good idea to look at it again
There's probably
as
no,
we have projects come up.
probably no downside, Councilman Severing, to Councilman Swanson's suggestion. I don't see a downside.
Mayor, may I make a thought about this? And that is that for the most part, especially new projects like the public works or if they're or the police station or any of these other facilities, you're generally involved with those as part of the budget process at a minimum. And as such, as the various departments bring these projects forward in that's a great time for them to be able to report to you as to how they're able to meet those standards. So along the way, I just think it's going to be one of those natural outcomes as you see these projects come forward to you.
Mayor, if I may add one thing.
Councilman Swanson?
One of the thoughts that I had in wanting to do the review is, what if we discover as the city now embarks on doing a more thorough job of following the same standards that we require of citizens, that we realize, wow, that's really overly burdensome. And we want to backtrack. I think it would be just healthy, my opinion, that we just have that review and we take a look at, now that we're fully following what we require the citizens to do, how does that impact the ability to get things done? And are we? Maybe we aren't, maybe we are. Is the requirements we have on the citizens overburdensome or not?
I think the point is we could learn from this, because I'm assuming if we came back and said, we want to amend this ordinance because it's overburdening, we would probably want to review the ordinances we're requiring the citizens to comply with also.
Exactly.
So maybe we have a learning experience here to find out maybe if we're putting too much burden on our citizens. So coming back, Councilman Severing, you made the motion. There's a second. We've had discussion. Would you like to amend your motion, or do you want it to go forward as is?
No, I think now that we've kind of fleshed it out and I've seen some perspectives that I hadn't thought about, I just didn't want to put us under a situation where we had to look at something if everything was going well. But understanding Phil's perspective, I think that's a valuable perspective. So I would amend my motion based on Councilman Swanson's recommendation. So thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Blake.
I was hoping, Councilman Severing, you would repeat that whole motion. However, I think we understand you just want to add to that motion the fact that we review it no later than 2 years. Okay,
I totally concur.
Councilman Severing has amended his motion. Councilwoman Ekstrom, did you want to still second that?
I still second, yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 2020-15 as earlier stated. Any further discussion? Not, we'll have a roll call vote on this. Councilwoman Stoker?
Yes.
Councilwoman Ekstrom?
Yes.
Councilman Swanson?
Yes.
Councilman Severing?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for the discussion, Council. Muchly appreciated. We'll now move on to our next item on our agenda, which is item number 7. Discussion or action to consider an ordinance amending North Ogden City Code Title 6-2E-1, which is discharging weapons within the city limits. And our city attorney and city manager, John Call, will make the presentation. John?
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the ordinance that was brought up last council meeting during public comments at the work session. The chief has reviewed this and provided some feedback, but the language on your screen shown in red is the language that's been added that allows an additional exception to the weapon discharge. And it is tied specifically to archery hunts. And it says that a person would be allowed to discharge a weapon in accordance with archery hunts authorized by a Department of Wildlife Resources depredation permit/hunt with written permission from the police chief. So that was language the chief felt comfortable with. He's worked on what that written permission would look like, but he would recommend that this would be a good solution if the council wished to pass this ordinance.
Thank you, John. And I think as a reminder to the council, we had a citizen request that basically because of the excess number of deer in her yard, and she had a permit, but the ordinance wouldn't allow her to utilize the permit. So do we have any questions or discussion on that?
Mayor,
Councilman Swanson?
with the circumstance that led to this being on the agenda tonight, when you said that the individual had a permit, was that just a general hunting permit? Was it a depredation permit from the Division of Wildlife Resources? What kind of permit was it?
My understanding, it was from the Division of Wildlife Resources, and it was a depredation permit.
Okay.
That was my understanding.
That's correct.
Okay. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
And well, in fact, to that comment, Councilman Swanson, the chief specifically does not want it tied to any hunt. He wants it specifically tied to a depredation hunt because those are extremely limited, and we don't want to open up archery hunting in the city limits generally to the entire population. Or he wouldn't recommend it.
Thank you. And John, if I remember right, under the DWR depredation hunt guidelines, that no discharge can occur within 600 feet of an occupied building. Is that correct?
So it says within 600 feet without written permission.
Without written permission. Okay.
So they would be able to get permission from their neighbors, but a depredation hunt, for those who don't know, is typically tied to an agricultural production type activity on the property. So just a normal person would not typically be able to get a depredation tax. They have to be doing agricultural production on their property as well.
Hey, John, I wonder if do they issue any permits depredation of rattlesnakes?
They don't, but they do. They actually do have a program where they will come and relocate them, and they'll spray paint them. And if they come back into city again, then they do destroy them. But that's all handled by the DWR.
I might have to contact them with what's going on up here. Any further discussion or questions? If not, I think the ordinance number, would this be 2020-16, Annette?
Yes.
Okay, so we'd be looking for a motion to approve ordinance 2020-16, which is an ordinance amending the North Ogden City Code regarding discharging weapons within city limits. Do we have a motion?
Mayor,
Councilwoman Stoker?
I'd like to make a motion that we amend the North Ogden City Code on discharging weapons within the city limits as stated in the sentence that was written. I don't know if you need any more. In accordance with the archery hunts authorized by the Department of Wildlife Resources, a deformation permit hunt with written permission from the police chief.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Councilman Swanson, could you repeat that motion for us, please?
What Cheryl said.
Okay, good job. Thank you.
Cheryl,
We have a
Council,
Cheryl, did you include the ordinance number?
2020-16.
2020-16.
and council, can you also authorize staff to fix the title on this ordinance? I did not put it down as the weapon discharge. I left it as an animal ordinance, and it should be amended to reference the weapon discharge. That's okay.
I think I said weapon discharge.
Yeah, I just up here on the title of the document in front of you.
Mhm.
So,
I just need to fix
Councilwoman
that.
Stoker, would you like to add that to your motion that we allow staff to amend the title of the ordinance?
Yes, what the mayor said.
Okay, so done. You okay with that, Councilman Swanson?
What Cheryl and the mayor said, yes.
Okay, so we should have had refreshments after the field trip, I'm thinking. Let's get a little kitty here. Okay, we have a motion and we have a second to approve ordinance 2020-16. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll go with a roll call vote. Councilman Swanson,
Yes.
Councilwoman Ekstrom,
Yes.
Councilman Severing,
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. We'll now move on to number 8 on our agenda, which is discussion on the North Ogden City Code Title 4-4 Residential Solicitations. And our presenter will be Mr. John Call, our city manager and attorney. John?
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Mayor. So, council, a few weeks ago, we sent you out the ordinance on solicitation, or sorry, solicitors, 2 different topics. It's a long ordinance. This shown is 13 pages. We've had quite a few complaints this year, and we typically receive some complaints every year about solicitors. Not necessarily because they're doing something the ordinance allows them to. Usually they're doing something the ordinance prohibits or is silent on, but we have other provisions of state or local code that are not silent. So typically they're in violation. And so the question is, after reviewing that, does the council see a need to change this ordinance or to do something else with the penalties, or to just simply work on a request with the police department to spend extra effort and time enforcing this ordinance? I had planned on writing a magazine article about this, telling people what they should do if they are approached by a solicitor and they feel that they're not following the ordinance, who they should call and how they should report it to the police. But that doesn't mean that's probably the minimum we should do. And so the next step is, what would the council like to do moving forward?
Okay, thank you, John. Would open up discussion for the council regarding their desire to address this ordinance. Any changes, enforcement, concerns? Open for discussion, council.
Mayor, I'll pipe in again.
Okay,
I
thank
think
you,
the-
Councilman Swanson. Go ahead.
I think the biggest issue that has arisen this year that I can remember is the aggressive nature of some of the solicitors that have been approaching homes this year. I don't know how we would ever enforce the no solicitation from a city level. But the aggressive nature, to me, boy, I'll tell you, if I were some of these ladies especially that have written to us and talked about how aggressive some of these male solicitors have been, I would be, if I were them, I would be fearful. And so I don't know how we address that. I don't know what mechanism we would use to better enforce it. But John, I don't remember seeing anything in the current ordinance that talks about aggressive soliciting.
John, it seems like there was some provisions to prevent that. To Councilman Swanson's point, I don't think it used the term aggressive solicitation. But there was something, it seems like, as I read through that, that there might have been some mention of that. While you're looking for that, John, one of the things I've heard too, Councilman Swanson and other council members, is that they're staying out past, I believe 9 o'clock is the latest they can solicit. And I know most of the soliciting takes place in the summer, but it starts getting dark before 9 o'clock here pretty soon. I'm wondering if we should push that time frame back from 9 o'clock. Particularly for, I think, some of our residents who might be single, to Councilman Swanson's point, and to others that maybe kind of lock up the house a little bit earlier. I'm wondering if we, council, could consider moving the latest time frame back. That is something I think that is clear enough that could be enforced in the city. Just a thought for discussion. Councilman Swanson, I see you unmuted. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'm wondering if we leave the maximum for this time of year when it's still fairly light at 9 o'clock. We leave the maximum at 9 o'clock, or the setting of the, the official sunset. So that in the winter months, we don't have people out after dark at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening when it's dark, and that we don't allow soliciting after the sun sets with a maximum of 9 o'clock.
Good point.
Mayor,
Councilwoman Stoker.
with what Phil said earlier, with some of the aggressiveness of the solicitors, and if you're there home by yourself, 9 o'clock is a late hour to be answering the door when you're there by yourself. So I have no problem with the pushback to 8. That's late enough, in my opinion.
John, did you find anything about Councilman Swanson's comment about aggressive solicitors?
So this language right here, I think, is the closest to it. That says any solicitor who's at any time asked by an occupant of a resident or dwelling shall leave immediately and depart peacefully. That's the one that's probably the closest. It does require that they communicate that. And then there is also this section G that talks about repeated soliciting after they say they're not interested. Those are the two that are probably in there now that would be in that category. I do think, sorry, I was going to make a movie reference about aggressive negotiating, but I think that aggressive would be a term that's somewhat hard to define. And so I think that these type of things are the ones that most statutes rely on, because it's easy to tell. The cops can go, or the police officers can go and ask, did you tell him to leave? And the person can say, yes, I told them to leave. And that's enough of a reason to say that they violated the statute and they're subject to the penalty.
That's kind of what was stuck in my mind, even though it doesn't use the term aggressive. Does that meet your requirements, Councilman Swanson?
It does. The one report that we received, I think we all received it, was of a solicitor that actually stuck his foot in the door to prevent the homeowner from closing the door. John, how does that take it to another level? Is that something we should put into this ordinance?
So we could add it to this section, this subsection E
Uh-huh.
that says they shouldn't make contact with the person. We could add another provision like it that says or physically obstruct a person from leaving or closing a door. So that would be one that could easily be added that I think would be something I haven't seen in this ordinance.
Good point. John or council, could we send John back to amend this with the things we've talked about, or would you like to take care of that this evening?
So we didn't put it as an action item, so we would need to bring it back at a future meeting.
Any other comments for John to consider? Councilwoman Ekstrom?
Yes, I just had a question. What is the process that solicitors go through to actually get a permit? And do they have like a little identifying tag that they have gotten that permit so that it's easily seen by the residents? And then are these rules really explained clearly? Can we have the solicitors like initial and, you know, make sure that they really understand we're serious about this, don't be obnoxious. And then do we have clear penalties outlined so that it's like, you do this, this is what's going to happen to you? Is that, I don't know. Anyway, could you explain just the process that a solicitor goes through?
And the consequences.
And the consequences, yeah.
So the process is quite extensive. You can see here it starts on page 6. It talks about the application form. They are required to provide a BCI background check, which is essentially the type of background check we would do on employees, as well as it basically looks for any crimes, including and focuses on violent crimes of individuals. It wouldn't cover, typically if someone had a minor thing, you know, a theft or something 10 years ago, it wouldn't be an issue, but it at least makes us aware of it. And then if they do have a history, they are denied. And then if they don't go through and get the actual application permit, which does include a tag with their picture on it and their name so that residents can always ask for that identification. I believe the penalty is down here. It's a Class B misdemeanor, fine up to $1,000 and jail not to exceed 6 months. So that's pretty much on line with the state bail schedule for the maximum penalty for Class B misdemeanors, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Okay, so there really is no excuse. They understand this stuff when they apply and get a permit. Okay.
And I would also include that the people who don't apply and get permits, that's the biggest complaint we have. They know that they're supposed to, and the police are very they do not mince words about what is expected of them and what will happen if they show back up in the city, assuming they didn't give them a ticket at that moment, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ekstrom. Any other comments, suggestions for John as he takes this back to make adjustments?
You know, I like what Phil said. I wonder though, if we were to just put a time on it, it just makes it more clear rather than just the idea of the sun setting. If we just said 8 o'clock across the board.
Councilman Severing, I think, you know, as we made the initial suggestion, maybe to move that back to 8 o'clock, I think Councilman Swanson may have a point there, is if we set it at the time of sunset, because 8 o'clock now would be pretty late in the winter months. So I think maybe Councilman Swanson has a point there if we set that soliciting no later than, you know, official sunset.
That's okay. It was just a thought.
Oh, I mean, appreciate your thought, but do you see the problem that might be if we just set a standard time?
I do, but you know what, it's kind of interesting because different people are going to have perspectives on, you know, what is sunset, you know? You could see that happen. I could see that happening as well.
I think there's
It doesn't matter to
generally,
me.
yeah, good
Just a
point,
thought.
Councilman Severing. I believe that each day there's an official sunset time that's published, I believe.
And I'm sure everybody that's going to be looking at that published time is going to be keeping it too. So, but that was just a thought, Mayor. I'm fine with that. I'm
Well,
just saying, I don't think
we're gonna
it'll be-
give you that assignment to publish that and market the sunset time each day, Councilman Severing, so.
But like I say, Mayor, I'm fine with that. I'm just saying that, at sunset or after sundown could be kind of misconstrued different by different people. But if you say
Okay.
8 o'clock, it's 8 o'clock. But I'm
All
happy either way.
I'll
Would it,
respect your comment there. We're just having a discussion.
Blake, Mayor, if I may,
Sure, Councilman Swanson.
Blake, would it be in your mind easier if we say went quarter by quarter and we identify, June, July, August, September, the average sunset or the latest sunset is this. And so in those months, this is the time, October, November, December, January, February, March. I can see where that would be confusing as well, though.
I'm just saying that, you know what, it's kind of like when you're hunting and the hunting guides say you can't shoot till sun up and you can't shoot after sundown. Well, there's a lot of liberty between some people to understand that definition. So I'm happy with either. It was just a thought to be able to say, look, if we say 8 o'clock, it's a key point indicator that you just can't be out there knocking on doors after 8 o'clock. And if you're going to be out here during the winter, knocking on the doors at 8 o'clock, you really only have this issue during winter or during summer. So that was just a thought, just a key point indicator. No problem.
I think it's a good thought, though.
Okay, council, what would be your recommendation to give instructions to John to go back? You want to set it at 8 o'clock?
Yes.
I think 8 o'clock is really clear. I mean, we do have those rules around it, just as Councilman Severing pointed out around hunting times. There's a set time that you are required to turn on your headlights too. And it's according to Poor Richard's Almanac, something, when the sun sets. That kind of goes into a little bit of common sense. But if we set it, 8 o'clock is 8 o'clock throughout the whole year, then we don't have to worry about it.
Councilman Swanson, you okay with that?
Yeah, I think great points have been made. And Blake, I appreciate you bringing that up from a perspective. I don't hunt, so that doesn't have a lot of meaning. Can we add to it too that council meetings can't go past sundown?
I'm with you on that one. Okay, so if I understand right, John, we would like to set the time no later than 8 o'clock. What other changes? We've got the change about physical contact. Any other suggestions for John to go back as he amends this ordinance to bring it back to us? John, does that give you adequate direction? Do you have any other questions?
No, I think that I've got what I need.
Okay, thank you. We'll then move on to the next. And thank you, council. Thank you, Councilman Severing, for expressing your opinion. Councilman Swanson and others. I think that was a good discussion. So thank you. We'll now move on to item number 9, which is a discussion and/or action to consider a resolution adopting an interlocal agreement with Weber Human Services for the services to the North View Senior Center. I think, John, in the packet you outlined the pertinent points of the contract. Why don't you refresh our memory with that? So presenter will be John Culler, City Manager and Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. So this, as the mayor identified in the staff report, this agreement is established to basically identify how the senior activities are run over at the facility, particularly in relation to the city and Weber Human Services. There is a third group, or you could call it larger than a third group or more than one group, of other entities and groups who also do activities over there that coordinate with us and with the Weaver Human Services staff on activities and things. I know that, for example, the Northview Senior Citizens, Councilman Severing is on that board and participates actively in that group. They provide some activities over there, and then we have other groups who do, like the North Ogden band does some practice over there, and we have classes for Zumba and things. But this agreement kind of governs who's responsible to pay for what. The biggest highlight is North Ogden City pays for half of the salary of the Weaver Human Services staffer, and the Weaver Human Services pays for the other half. And that includes salary and benefits on both sides, so we each pay for half of that. And then they also contribute to some of the costs for the telephone line. And then in reality, the majority of all the other costs, electrical, heating, repair on kitchen equipment, bathroom supplies, things like that, falls on the city. If I remember right, I think we typically spend between the salary and all the other items about $70,000 a year to keep the facility going. It is a North Ogden City owned building, and this agreement just manages those respective costs and expectations. The big change, as identified in the staff report, was that the Weaver Human Services have increased their liability from $1 million to $3 million. I'm assuming that is at the recommendation of their attorney. We typically have had several slip and falls or trip and falls over at the senior center that we've kept track of, and they do a good job of making sure we're aware of everything. Most of them have ended with nothing more than a little bit of embarrassment from the folks involved, and no injuries or anything like that to be worried about. But Annette might even have more details on that. She would handle all the claims. But in general, it's been a good relationship with and provided a service to not only our community, but our surrounding communities as well, as we do have residents from Harrisville and Pleasant View who participate in this facility. Anyways, and then the only other final thing is any revenues received from the activities. So some of the classes that the groups provide, they charge for. This makes it clear that they are entitled to those revenues and or donations, just like the city is for any donations we would receive in association with senior related events or rental of the building.
John, just a question here. Since we own the building, if there were a serious slip and fall, how does the county's insurance integrate with ours since we're the owner of the building?
So the way it would work, obviously the two insurance companies would be involved. If for example, it was during an actual activity that the seniors were putting on, or that the Weaver Human Services were putting on, most likely their insurance would take over that. Let's say they were doing a dance and something happened during the dance, that would be covered. If it was something that had to do with the physical structure of the building, then our insurance would typically be involved. So if someone tripped on a piece of carpet that was, not in good repair, then that would typically fall on our insurance, and our insurance would step in and cover it.
You use the term most likely. Is there any way we can clarify the fact that, because I've seen two insurance companies get involved and it's kind of one of these, is there any way we can clarify who has liability for, I'm just wondering what their $3 million would cover. I'm a little bit foggy on that.
So what it currently says is it covers claims that arise from programs and services offered by WHS and the people who come to the center for those programs and services. I don't know how to make it more clear than that, other than it seems, in my opinion, to cover anyone who's coming there as part of one of the advertised activities that they're putting on. Where the city would probably end up with the biggest risk of liability is when the third-party users are using it, like the Northview citizens or like the Zumba class or something like that, where people who are coming to those activities would be covered under the city's insurance, as are all the buildings and facilities that the city has. So that's probably where the two insurance companies would start the discussion was the activity Weaver Human Services sponsored or another group sponsored? And I think it's pretty clear that Weaver Human Services is stepping up and providing coverage for their activities and the people who come to those activities.
Well, since the director is employed by the county and we're just paying a share of that, but he's actually their employee, I'd imagine the lunches and most of the things that are there are Weaver Human Service directed. I just want to make sure that if we can clarify that aspect of liability anymore. So I'll open it up. And before I do open it up, I know Councilman Swanson has made some comments before, and I have actually had a conversation with Mayor Call, and I think it's a valid point. If their citizens are going to use it, they should fairly participate. And so, Councilman Swanson, know that your point is well taken, and I think those discussions need to be reopened. So that's the commitment I think I would make, is to reopen those with discussions of the mayors of the other cities that are using it. Any further discussion or questions on this?
Mayor, I had a question.
Councilwoman Ekstrom?
Just a couple of points. I've had some residents complain to me, I guess because I'm in the food industry, about the food that they don't like it. So I don't know who's in charge of providing the meals there, or if they can open that up to some other vendors that might be able to bring food in there. I don't know exactly how this works. So that's my first point. And then the second is, speaking to the shared nature of this facility between, do we have records of who is actually using the facility and where they're from? So it's like we can, when we open the discussions, that we have some data behind that. It's like, okay, yeah, your residents have used this like 15, 20 times out of so many times, so that we've got some data behind us to negotiate from. So.
Okay, good point, Councilwoman Ekstrom. Any other questions?
No. So, John, do you know who is in charge of the food over there?
It is Weaver Human Services. They prepare it in their commercial kitchen at the county building, not the county building, but the Weaver Human Services building. And then they bring it up and either keep it warm, or they have it provided in, like currently they're packed lunches that people pick up a box and take home.
Okay. And is that like a set thing, like they're just in there and nobody else can provide food there?
It's there.
It's entirely in their wheelhouse. It's one of the services the county provides that we don't get involved in.
Okay.
Yeah, the county, I think, makes that decision. John, I would like to just say that somehow I would like to see if there's a way we can clarify who's sponsoring the activity. I think if we can clarify that, it gives us a leg to stand on. So I'm not sure that's part of this ordinance, but I would think that we can have a definite clarification of whose activity this is somehow.
I am sure that Zella and Tiffany, so Zella is the senior director over there, the WHS employee. Between Tiffany and Zella, I'm sure they could go through the calendar and make it clear who it's sponsored by, to provide some feedback. And we could probably even go back a couple of months and find out how much of it's WHS, how much of it's city, and then how much of it is those third-party groups. and
Yeah, I would
provide
like
that
to see-
information back.
On the calendar, John, something like St. Patrick's Day dance sponsored by Weber Human Services, Zumba class sponsored by North Ogden City, so that it's very clear in the event we have to call upon the insurance. So if that's not too big of a hassle, are you all right with that, council? All right, any further discussion? I think the contract was in our packet. Hopefully you've had a chance to review that. Any other discussion or questions before I seek a motion to approve the resolution? Okay, do we have a resolution number or anything on this, Annette?
Yes, the resolution is 13-2020, and the resolution is adopting an interlocal agreement, which is A14-2020.
Annette, isn't it A15? Didn't we use A14 on Friday?
You're right, we did. You're correct, John. It's A15-2020.
Agreement A15-2020 and resolution
Yes.
number, repeat that again for the council.
Yes, the resolution's 13-2020. The agreement is A15-2020.
Do we have a motion, council?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve resolution number 13-2020, approving agreement 15-2020 with appreciation for the mayor's efforts to our sister cities to help pay their portion.
Okay, do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
We have a second by Councilwoman Ekstrom. Any further discussion? If not, we'll have a roll call vote. Councilman Swanson,
Yes.
Councilman Severing,
Yes.
Councilwoman Ekstrom,
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 10, which is a discussion or action to consider an extension of the trash collection agreement. Our presenter will be John Call, city manager and attorney.
So council, this might be one of the items you have more questions about, and I know Dave is available. This contract is basically renewing and extending the contract with Republic Services to collect trash. We brought the trash in-house and we're immediately realized that we thought that the entire problem was that we had underestimated the number of trucks we needed. And then as we've dug into it and done some more work, in part we found out that trash, the at-home recycling trash, or recycling and trash, have gone up by 30% in volume since the COVID-19 stuff has come online, because people are at home and buying more takeout and throwing all their trash in their home trash cans as opposed to work or school or businesses. So what the general word we're getting from everyone in the business is that the volume has gone up by 30%, which in our case means that we should have had 4 trucks at the minimum instead of 3. And because of that, we were unable to really provide the service that was necessary. And as we looked at the ability of the city and what it would take to use the trucks we had and add more hours, the cost was going to exceed for those additional individuals what it would cost to extend the contract. So we talked with the place where we got the trucks. They are confident that given a month and a half, they can get us back the money that we put into the trucks. And then with the cost for trash will go up a little bit, but with the fund balance we have, as well as the additional revenues we expected this year, we don't anticipate a need for a recommendation of an increase in trash rates to the residents, that we'll be able to make it work this year, and then go out to RFP in January with a start day of next July to get the best rate the market can provide us at that time. So this is an increase in the trash cans to $4 for the first can, or for the first black can, $1.70 for the second black can, and then an increase to $3.16, which is lower than the original number they had proposed by about 10 cents a can for the blue cans. But that's what's been proposed and recommended, and we are asking for the council's approval of this agreement. Dave, do you have any comments or that you'd like to add? Oh, sorry, I should probably allow you to speak.
No, John, I think you hit on it very well. The only thing I guess I would add is that, we did reach out to, a bunch of providers of garbage to get all that feedback, and it kind of came down to exactly what John had said, that everybody is seeing this 30% increase, so we couldn't even ask for for their help, because they're having to pick up their own by 30%, and that was the private sector and other cities like Ogden and Brigham that are doing it themselves as well.
And the other thing I didn't mention, council, is we did look at adding another truck, but because of the COVID information, we actually hit it at the right time to get the trucks that we got, because everybody went into a panic and canceled their orders. And then immediately when people saw the increase in trash and the need, the trucks have gone from a 6-month back order to a 9 to 12-month back order. And so we actually can't even buy an additional truck at this point in time without waiting for 9 to 12 months for it to come in.
Well, that's the surprise that we got, was the 30% increase in trash, which resulted in our inability to handle that with the trucks we have now. John, you might want to explain the conversation I've had with you and you and Dave about selling those trucks, because that's our risk. So you might want to explain to the council the discussion we've had with that and my concern.
So that is the biggest risk, that we had leased those trucks for roughly $160,000 for this next year. The leasing company they feel confident. They obviously can't assure us anything because they need to find buyers, but the 2 new trucks that we had leased, they don't see an issue with the resale of those, particularly because of that 9 to 12 month backlog now. But the older truck that was supposed to be our backup truck, they are optimistic we can get the money out of it, but they're not promising necessarily, they're not guaranteeing it. And obviously that's an issue that as it all shakes out, Dave and I are working on and going to take responsibility for as best we can, and make sure that we are presenting the trucks in a way to get the best price back out of them, to make sure that the city doesn't lose money to the best of our ability. And that, this is obviously, I was an advocate for this process and bringing it in-house, and it's not something I take lightly, the fact that we are not only stopping a service that we thought we could do, but we're also putting the city at risk. And we try our best, and in this case, I think we thought we knew everything we need to. We missed a few things, and then the market shifted a little bit in a way that we couldn't anticipate, or at least we didn't think to ask questions about. And so that's on me, and unfortunately the situation we're in.
I like to put it this way. I have signed with blood that we'll get our money out of the trucks. Is that a fair explanation of our discussion, John?
Yes, I would say so. I think I also still even have to name my firstborn child after you as well, right?
I would, well, you know, if you knew my first name, I wouldn't require that of anyone. If you know what the S stands for, but once again,
I know what it stands for.
hey, quiet.
I was planning on just naming my kid Mayor.
Oh,
There you
okay, that's good. But once again, I think that's the surprise that no one knew about is the 30% increase. And in our discussions, the most important thing here is that we can serve the citizens of North Ogden in a way they expect. And we went through every analysis to try to do that. And with the shortage of trucks and the changes, we just could not find a way to have confidence in our minds that we could take care of our citizens, particularly as the winter months come upon us. I would say, and Phil knows this, he's had conversations with several of the drivers, and this wasn't from the fact they weren't working very hard. I want to put this in perspective. When we told other cities that our drivers were collecting upwards of 120, 130 cans an hour, they were somewhat amazed that our team was doing that. So our team gave it everything they had. I know in my discussions with Dave, one of the things that was concerning to him, he said, you know, Mayor, if we were only doing 90 cans an hour and with experience got up to 130, which is like at the top of the ladder, he said, I would feel better about it. He said, our guys were already collecting 130 cans an hour. And so we're not going to pick that extra efficiency up through experience. So once again, Dave and John and myself have had some in-depth discussions on this. I've made it clear that this is not a blame game here, that they did the homework, we supported it. And the big surprise was the fact that the increase of 30% is quite a bit when you're collecting garbage. So any questions, comments, or concerns? I just want to say I know Dave lost a lot of sleep on this, but I want to say he did his homework the best he could, and this surprise just hit us. So, Councilwoman Ekstrom?
Yes, I think back to our discussion when we were talking about putting this in-house. And I think, Mayor, you said, in my experience, there's no such thing as seamless, right? And so well, this is what we found. It's like, well, we tried it, and this is what, you know, I'm reminded of a quote that I heard that's like, well, to get good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment, you know. But this is how we learn stuff, right? We try it. And so I commend Dave and John for all of the work that you did, and I was so proud. I got really excited when I was a city employee that was collecting our garbage, and I think they did fantastically. But you know, these are unknowns. We try to understand all of the variables that go into a decision, but we can't, you know, the assumptions that we make are the assumptions that we are the best we can come up with. So the one question that I did have was, we did hire another employee. Does that mean that employee is now going to be laid off? Because I hate to have someone lose their job too.
That's a good
We actually, Dave, why don't you answer it?
So we actually, we left one of the positions open because of, you know, the uncertainty with COVID and those kind of things, that we actually had two people move over to garbage. We actually left one of the positions in water open. The guys had picked up some of that slack and in that position. So it was seamless to move the one back over. But we also had an employee that's going to take an inspector job for another city. And so he had put his 2 weeks in. So we're actually going to be able to move that other, the other driver to that position. So no, we won't have to lay anybody off or anything like that.
Great, silver lining. Okay.
Mayor,
Councilwoman Stoker, please.
I had the opportunity the first week that they were collecting garbage to go out with Dylan. And I mean, I was overwhelmed at the amount of garbage and how what they had to do in getting the cans shimmied so they could pick them up and dump them in the truck without dumping garbage all over. And if it did dump, then I watched him get out of the truck, pick up the garbage, set up the garbage cans, and shovel the garbage back in the can or in the truck. And I also watched little kids come out to watch those dump trucks. And he honked at them and waved, and they were just thrilled and chased it up the street as far as they could go. And a lady stopped to get out of the way or to wait so he could pick up the cans. And he said to her, "Thank you." And a resident, 3 cans had been missed on their street, and he heard the conversation and he finished the route that he was on. And he said, if it's okay with you, we can go check out that residence in that street that was missed. And I said, that would be great. And so he went and took care of it again, got out and picked up stuff the can was overflowing and it was dumped out, and never said a word, never complained, just smiled and went on his way. So it was a great experience. And I asked him, I said, do you hate us now for the decision that we made? And he says, almost, but not quite. So I just want the residents and also the public works guys to know that they really did a good job for what they were up against.
Thank you, Councilwoman Stoker. And I know I had the chance to talk with some of them, and it was incredible to see the commitment they had to doing what they said they would do. But they were very unhappy with, I think, the experience. And I would also add to this that even some of the calls we got from residents over to Public Works with some of the ladies that work in the office, there was a great deal of, maybe great deal is not the term, but some pretty tough comments to them that were upsetting. And I know that each of us probably received numerous emails that, hey, my garbage is usually picked up at 8 o'clock. It's 11 o'clock. What are you guys doing? And so I think we learned a few things there also. I appreciate the feedback we got, but Councilman Swanson, I know you, I saw that you had unmuted. Would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, 2 comments. First is a hats off to Bryce, Dylan, and Kyle, the 3 drivers that we had, and Dave, for working long, hard, thankless hours to try to make this work. They really did put in every ounce of energy that they had to try to, including up to 16-hour days to try to get it all done. The ladies in the front office, Shelley and Crystal, and I know I'm blanking out on a couple of other names there. Dave, if you would pass that on for me, that would be great. But I think the other shining example in all of this is frankly you, Mayor. I hope the residents see that you and the council, we came together to try to do something good for the city, what we thought was good, and we thought we'd done our homework sufficiently to make the correct decision. But when it was clear that the decision wasn't the correct decision, nobody sat around trying to defend their position or to hunker down in their bunker because I don't want to admit that this didn't work. We did, Mayor, you led out, and we did what was best for the city after learning a painful lesson over 2 weeks. And I think that's quite commendable. It shows very much that there is interest in doing what's right for the city, not in doing, in trying to prove that any one person's idea is the best idea or correct in defending it when it's defenseless. So excellent job all around.
Thank you, Phil. And once again, I know that in our discussions we had, that the team looked at every option that was available. And even though it was painful, we, as you said, Phil, made the decision to move forward with what's right for the citizens. And I think that's our goal in everything we do. So thank you. Any other comments before we seek a motion to enter into this contract? Thank you for your comments. We would be looking for an action to consider extension of the collection agreement with Republic Garbage. Do we have a number or anything on that, Annette?
Yes, it's A14-2020.
So we'd be looking to approve agreement A 14-2020, which is an extension of the trash collection agreement with Republic Services. We have a motion.
Mayor, I move that we adopt agreement A-14-2020, amending the addendum to add residential waste and solid waste and recycling collection and disposal for Republic Services.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ekstrom. Do we have a second?
I second that.
I have a second by Councilman Severing. Any further discussion? If not, we'll have a roll call vote on this. Councilwoman Stoker,
Yes.
Councilman Severing,
Yeah.
Councilman Swanson,
Yes.
Councilwoman Ekstrom.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item 11 on our agenda, which will be public comments. John, if you would monitor that for us, and once again, as a reminder, citizens who have comments, they would state their name and address. We would appreciate it. John, please let us know.
Okay, nothing yet. We do have a comment from JD Dalpaz.
Okay, JD, if you'd state your name and your address for us and make your comment.
Hi everyone, JD Dalpass, 734 East, 2700 North. Just had a comment. I don't know how much the how much the citizens of Pleasant View use the senior center, but just to give you some perspective, I have family that lives in both North Ogden and Pleasant View, and I kind of brought up this comment that we had a while ago that, you know, Pleasant View should be paying into our senior center. And some of my family that lives in Pleasant View kind of immediately shot back and said, oh, well, people from North Ogden use pickleball courts all the time. And so I think we should try, if at all possible, to try not to be tribal about things. I don't know what the expense is, but I personally, our family uses a lot of the Pleasant View parks. We really enjoy Barker Park over there and Shady Lane Park, and go over there all the time. And so I think that there's probably usage from Pleasant View to North Ogden parks, et cetera. So just wanted to give you that perspective. I have no idea what the numbers are as to what we would be asking for from Pleasant View, but just wanted to give that perspective.
Thank you, JD. Very good point. And just maybe a point of reference, I believe they already make some contribution to the senior center. Is it $5,000 a year? Councilman Swanson, is that your recollection?
They do make 5,000, but that's to the senior group and their activities. It does not go towards the building and its maintenance or anything like that.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, JD. That's something we surely need to consider.
Thanks.
John, anyone else?
No, not at this time.
Okay, we'll move on to item 12 then, and that'll be comments. We'll start with the council. Any comments you've received from citizens that you like to pass on for staff to look into?
Mayor, I have one.
Okay, Councilman Swanson.
Let me pull it back up here. It is, oh, hang on. I thought I had it right at my fingertips. Here it is. It's a storm drain, Dave. There's a storm drain that's still full all the way to the grate, looking at the picture that was sent to me of debris and dirt and stuff. The address is 1300 East, 2675 North. So if we can get that cleaned out, and other than that, I don't have anything.
I'll get that taken care of tomorrow.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, any other comments? Councilwoman Ekstrom?
We continue to get requests from residents about recycling. I just wondered what our current situation was, or status of getting any kind of centralized recycling set up. Do we have anything in the works that we're going to do? I'd like to be able to address this for people that would really like to recycle some things.
A good question, Councilwoman Ekstrom. I've had some discussions as recently as this morning with Dave about that. Dave, do you want to let the council know what we discussed this morning, what you're working on?
Yes, sir. So, as part of, all of the garbage discussions, we had to put out all of our dumpsters, back out for bid this year. And, we actually selected Republic, for our dumpsters as well. They came in with the lowest bids. And I've been in discussions with her on how to do a community recycling program. She's brought up some great ideas, and what we want to start with, council, is, if we can get your blessing, is to start with a couple dumpsters that will be picked up multiple times a week at the old Public Works building. On the outside of the old Public Works building, where the mechanic shops were, there is an access on two different ways that you can get into that area, where we can put the dumpsters there. The great thing about Republic's recycling program is where they take those recycling goods, they don't have to be sorted at the can itself. So on the cans, we would like to post, that you can put in plastics 1s and 2s, the cardboard, paper, aluminum, and we can post something that says that, that it will be monitored, under camera at all times, so that people aren't just throwing their trash into there, or they're not throwing, couches and those kind of things in front of our dumpsters, that they're actually being used for recyclable goods. And if it grows and we feel like we need to, pick more places, we can, or if we need to put more dumpsters at that facility, that'll be something we can do as well. But they come out here multiple times a week. And so, we felt like this was a good opportunity to try and see how the community dumpsters work for us.
Well, that sounds great. Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. And hopefully in my article in the Connection this month, I can address that issue along with the several other things in the city, the ordinance project we're on, along with the scheduled Truth and Taxation hearing on August the 4th. So I'll try to mention that also, Councilwoman Ekstrom. Thank you, because I've also had several emails and comments. Anything else from the council? Staff?
I got two things, Mayor. One is the discussion on the North Cove tomorrow as part of the joint work session with the Planning Commission. It starts right at 6, and it won't go more than an hour. That's because the applicant, they need to leave by 7, so, or I guess 7:15, but so it'll be over quick. And then the last one is just, I've got a few comments back on the reports for your assignments on a monthly basis. And if you have any other thoughts on that for whether you'd like to go on the second Tuesday or the fourth Tuesday, please let me know. But what we'll be doing is regularly having it on the agenda as a report from council member and then your last name as part of an agenda to just keep the council in the loop on your other assignments with committees and departments. And that's what I've got, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And as just a refresher, I just asked each one of the council members to report back on their assignments. For instance, I know Councilman Severing has been working with Public Works, Councilwoman Ekstrom with Parks and Recreation, Councilwoman Stoker with Police, and Councilman Swanson with Finances. I just think it's a good thing to report back so that the public knows what's going on. It doesn't have to be extensive, but I do believe that it would be helpful for other council members and for the public. So I think what we're going to do is have 2 council members on the second and 3 council members on the fourth, or vice versa. So we split it up a little bit. I just have a couple things. First of all, I would like to express appreciation to Republic in stepping up and working with us. And thank Dave and John for negotiating that with Republic. They're fully aware that we will be putting out an RFP in December or January, which I believe that was our desire initially, but because of the compressed time, we were unable to do that. So they fully understand that. And so I just wanted to express appreciation to them for stepping up and helping us with the situation we were in. And I think this does allow Councilwoman Ekstrom, thank you for reminding me about my comment about transparency and seamlessness. I think we all know that things don't always work out as we'd hoped. And I think our staff understands that we're not going to be perfect in every decision. But the key is that we find solutions to serve our citizens, which they have done. I would also just make one other comment about the CARES grant program that's going on. We need to get that work out to our businesses. We have agreed to coordinate with the county. We have a lot of businesses in our community, and I would encourage the council to get that word out in any way they can. I've seen several posts on social media regarding the program, and just would point out that we do have representation that's members from 3 different cities that will be reviewing and approving those grants, and Councilman Swanson has been appointed by the county to be one of those reviewers. And hopefully you've been contacted, Councilman Swanson.
Starting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., the fun begins.
And that's a commitment. It can be up to 8 hours a day. And so we're grateful for Councilman Swanson's commitment to do that. But it's a great program. I think there's adequate money out there to help our businesses. So I just wanted to make mention of that. And any chance you get council members to promote that, it'd be good. I'm going to try to make some calls directly to businesses to remind them and encourage them. And if you can do the same, it'd be beneficial. So that's all I have. I will be doing some videos. I'll be working with Councilman Severing. I'm going to try to do some videos to keep the citizens somewhat aware of what we're working on and what's happening. So also would be open for any suggestions on topics in the council that they feel would like to be addressed. So with that, that's all I have. We'd be looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Mayor, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Councilwoman Ekstrom has made a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Could you give a little bit more oomph on that, Councilman Severing? On that
I
second?
second it.
All right. Does anyone object to adjourning this meeting? If not, thank you, public, for joining us, and thank you, council, for your commitment to serving our citizens. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.